Well, good afternoon all. I'm Kavita Kumari. I'm a Sustainability and Health and Wellbeing Lead at Cundall. And today I'm going to share with you our journey through WELL and how myself and my team achieved the first WELL certified office in Europe. So moving along. So why we considered WELL? I think you can all agree with me that we spend quite a lot of time indoors. Scientific research tells us that we spend 60% of our time at work and 30% at home. So that's quite a long time. So we need to ensure that we've got good spaces to work and live and play in. The other thing which is why well is a good idea is we lead very fast-paced lives nowadays, which in return encourages unhealthy lifestyles. So, you read in the paper quite a lot about war and crime. The biggest deaths annually is dementia, diabetes, and heart disease, and they all relate to your choice of food and beverages. And even recently, we're talking about the virus which is affecting the UK. From a commercial perspective, what we find is that as a business, we we spend about 90% of the expense on staff. So it's very important to keep the staff happy and healthy at all times. Not only that, by having a happy and healthy space, what you'll find is that we're able to recruit and retain the brightest talent because the staff feel heard. So how did we manage this? One of the most interesting things, other than which we worked on, was we introduced a measuring of productivity. So this is where stakeholder consultation and speaking to the staff and getting them engaged was very, very important. So space in London is at a premium. What you're finding nowadays, everyone, densely populated office spaces, and that increases quite a lot of CO2 if not managed properly. So here is some scientific research from Harvard Medical School where it shows the engagement of the occupants within the space and how well they perform against different levels of activities. So you can look against the dots there, and depending on the ppm of CO2 on the top right hand side, where you sit according to your different tasks. So what we decided to undertake was, from speaking to staff, we engage in stakeholder consultation, asking them to assess their suitability and comfortability in the space against these key matrices: thermal comfort, air quality, acoustic quality, visual quality, perceived productivity, and biophilia. So I'll go into a little bit more of our experience and our approach. So the first thing we considered was the WELL building standard. So WELL encourages the human-centric design to enhance the user experience of a space. This standard made sense to what we were looking to achieve. All the criteria within the 100 features, as they call it, rather than credits, is derived from medical and scientific evidence. So when we're thinking about health and well-being, we should not forget about our planet, because WELL doesn't look at energy consumption or water consumption. So in that sense, alongside WELL, we also undertook BREEAM and included features where it aligned nicely with our objectives, which included LEED, Living Buildings Challenge, some credits from Fitwell, and SCAR. The benefits of also including BREEAM as well as LEED is they are holistic sustainability tools, but they have overlaps and crosswalks through WELL to achieve their points as well as the WELL credits, WELL features. One of the other things we considered early doors was the bespoke sustainability principles, which align nicely with the Sustainable Development Goals. WELL has now updated their manuals to show how each of these features can be aligned nicely with the 2030 goals going forward. So this is our office, the first WELL certified office in Europe. So here I'm going to give you some idea of what we included within the spaces and how the staff have reacted to these. So healthy materials was a very interesting feature which we had to look into. It was the first time we actually looked at materials in greater detail. In summary, it's basically looking for clean, natural materials where the impact has very little to do with has everything to do with the indoor air quality. We also created collaborative spaces where staff could get away to play or just have quiet time or private time. We didn't forget about waste reduction. All the furniture and finishes within the space is either recycled or sourced, so that we have signed up to a take back scheme to return this to the manufacturer at the end of life, or when we don't need it anymore. We also looked at reducing single-use plastic within the space and using as many recycled products and reused furniture as possible. We also considered energy efficiency. Ventilation was a priority since we moved into an existing space. CO2 sensors were applied across the floor plates to sort of minimize the impact of CO2 and activities when there were densely corners in the office. Fresh air ventilation was also protected. In terms of source control, we looked at indoor air quality plans as well as a cleaning protocol, so that the cleaners use the most gentle of products within the space. Again, about healthy materials and biophilia, plants are such a good idea to put into a well space. What you find is it's all about bringing nature indoors. It has an positive impact on your psychology. You'll find that natural materials is natural material transparency, because you know exactly what's in the material. Like you would go to a supermarket, buy a box of food, and you know what's in it. We also found that Portico, the health product declaration and the red list was a good guidance to help us choose the right materials for our space. Going back to productivity mapping, that helped us understand the environmental conditions of the space and how our staff could practice or work productively. One of the ways we did that as well, which is also another interesting fact about well, is performance in use. We have continuous IAQ monitoring happening in the space in real time, so we know exactly what temperatures, humidity, as well as all the air quality matrices happening in the space. One of the most interesting features of well is nourishment. What we found there is designing for inclusivity became a very important subject matter in our space. We found that providing seasonal local fruit and food was key to keeping our staff healthy on top of the normal provisions. We also looked at support for people with sensitivities and disabilities. We also educated our staff to ensure they understood what well-being meant. Moving on to the next set of items which we incorporated within the space. Technology is becoming the norm in our everyday society. We looked at smart furniture and also supporting connectivity and technology infrastructure within our space. We provided quality daylight with the level of daylight windows right around the office spaces. We also gave staff ergonomic furniture to support their well-being and their structure. Waste, again, I've touched on that before. Creating green spaces where our office was located, it was really important the feedback which we got from stakeholder consultation was that people wanted to get to offices really easily. So transport was a key item we need to consider, but not only that, access to nature. So where we are situated, next door to St. Paul's Cathedral, there's a lot of greenery within the office and the surrounding areas. Another way to get staff to engage with communities and like their area or where they're working, we found farmers markets, community engagement programs to get the staff involved. Fitness in well is also a very, very important thing to keep our staff, important feature to keep the staff healthy. We have encouraged staff by giving them supported employees programs to sign up to discounted gym memberships, as well as yoga and Pilates classes in the office. We touch on amenities, so getting to work has to be as less stressful as possible. So also supporting cyclist facilities and support for cyclists and walkers who come to work was key in our design. Last but not least, we are looking at quiet spaces. I mentioned private spaces, but this also looked at contemplation rooms, mothering spaces to support new mothers, and also mental health restoration spaces. So one of the most interesting things and advantages of well, I think, is performance in use. When we talk about performance in use, the key things which get tested before you can actually get certification in well is the air quality within the space, the water quality within the space, the light and noise levels between the space. This is key, especially if you're looking at every 3 yearly recertification. So a well certificate is not for life, unfortunately. Yeah. So I mentioned earlier about continuous monitoring. This is very interesting because you find that knowing what's happening in space helps understand when staff have feedback about what's happening in the space. The normal complaints we normally have is the air's too dry, and just by checking on the humidity, we found out what was the issue there. When it's too warm, the temperatures have been put up by the landlord. That is fed back quite quickly can be seen on the dashboard, which is accessible by all staff within the company. I've got a little video here to show you how this works. I don't know whether it will work or not, but it shows the impact of CO2 and how quickly it rises in our office space. You see things moving? So that is happening. That is a month's worth of real-time data being simulated. You can see the recommended CO2 levels within the space are between 600 and 800 ppm. But here you're looking at a normal working day in an office is going up to 1200, which is not a good place to be in if you're going to be making big decisions. So trying to understand what's happening in the space very quickly had an impact on how we design or chose our fresh air provisions. And that also enabled us to engage with our landlord and show them proof and data of what's happening in the spaces. Yep. Moving on, talking about measuring productivity, these are some guidance which we have used to advise how we understand and did the assessment of productivity within the space. Here you can see this is feedback from staff telling us when it was too cold and when it was too hot. From there, we could also understand which areas within the office were having a problem or not, or where people were comfortable. CO2 was another good example. And this is a summary of what we thought was productivity losses when compared against matrices which were advised within the guidance I mentioned earlier. So again, we're looking at particulate matter. Particulates and NOx emissions are a big story at the minute in the papers. So ensuring that you have great level of filtration is very important, so it filters out all the bad air before it comes into your space. So mitigating is quite a big exercise. Here is basically a screenshot of one of our models showing how people are responding and how productive they are. So anyone in yellow, so anyone in yellow is showing that they're productive, and anyone who's in blue is not quite productive. I think there's some color discrepancies there, but again, it shows how staff respond in different environments. So this is a summary of we doing a mapping of our previous office and our new office. So the left was our old office and the right-hand side is our new office. From the matrices, we found we were likely to increase productivity by about 2.6%. So all in all, when looking at that and looking at the expense of doing well and obtaining the products to meet the well criteria, we found that in a year we made 200K savings per annum, and that was a payback of about 3 months, if I'm not mistaken. And when comparing against other Cundell offices where well was not undertaken but still moved, there was a 50% reduction as well as a 27% reduction in staff turnover in the London office. So I mentioned first thing in the slides, pre and post occupancy surveys are very important. This is some feedback from the staff, and this engagement is ongoing. It's good to carry out staff engagements because you find that staff get more involved in the spaces and they help you maintain the space and the quality of the space. This is some matrix which I obtained from IWBI, where they are collating data from various spaces which have recently been well certified. So it's quite interesting there when you see the numbers. It's all looking very positive. So we talked about well at Cundell, but on the back of the experience we have gained, we're applying that to a few offices within London and abroad, internationally. Here you can see we're about to certify the next platinum co-working space, which will be the first in the world, but we've certified the first platinum as well in the UK. This is what a typical well platinum office looks like. That's the library where it has lots of natural materials and softer finishings. And this is the first co-working space which will be completed shortly. So, any questions? Should I put this on? Hello, Stephen.
Hello. A great presentation.
Right, okay, thank you.
Just interested to know of any tensions between. Obviously, I know your Carter Lane building, but interested to know or to see that you pursued energy metrics separately as well, because as you say, well doesn't really look at that. Did you find any tension between some of the well metrics on health and the energy metrics, and how did you resolve those?
Yeah, so in terms of energy, we looked at the key thing here was understanding what the efficiencies of the plant and the amount of fresh air coming into the space, for example. So increasing fresh air within a space is a good idea. However, that has an impact on the overall energy of the space. So what we've done there is we looked at different spaces where and the density within spaces, and within those spaces we've included for CO2 sensors and a demand control type ventilation, so we can use that amount of the set amount of fresh air which we've been given, and against that maintain the energy profile of the building or whatever's been targeted. So that was, and again, is continuing to monitor the quality and the amount of fresh air coming into the space. Interestingly, I have another example there where, because in a shared building, you're normally given a set amount of volume to go into the space, and as the different tenants move in and out, rebalancing can be quite tricky for the FM manager, as we found out. So some of our air sometimes gets taken, provision air, and given to somebody else. So doing continuous monitoring, that's why we found out how to maintain the quality and the volume of air which comes into our space.
Hi.
Hi.
So you said that basically by applying this whole standard into your offices, you're saving 200K per year. So how exactly do you save that money roughly?
So,
What was it?
so that was the 200K for the construction cost and recovering the payback of doing well. So in terms of incorporating all the well materials and the well activities into the space, which includes additional provision for staff, that equated to a total of 200K, and that was paid back between 3 months. So in terms of the productivity mapping exercise we carried out, deciding where staff sit and the amount of energy we had to use, that was the payback.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Stephen, I think.
Just ask one more, sorry.
Sure.
How did you measure the productivity? I'm interested in that when you talk about increases in productivity of 2.6%. How did you arrive at that?
So again, there's this guidance books which are available in industry from the BCO, the World Health Organization standard. They advise in terms of what sort of matrices or what sort of benchmarks you need to be assessing against. So we've tried to use that. We also use quite a lot of the WELL matrices and the World Health Organization matrices, industry best standards. So just putting that against what we are recording and doing a comparison. There's still a lot of work to be done with that.
I came to see you about 2 years ago, I think,
Okay.
to learn about your office fit out and well. And we tried to implement it into our office, which was in a one floor in a multi-tenanted building. We had a landlord, we had a situation where we had a not very flexible office. We had chilled beams, we had integral light fittings in there. We tried to take this on with a £50,000 budget from our CEO, and we failed because we couldn't get the landlord to commit to filtration and things like that. But mainly we failed because we didn't really understand how to achieve the well standard. We had an American consultant working for us. I think we paid £20,000, something like that. the advice wasn't very good, what would you advise somebody that is in One Carter Lane was a relatively new fit out, a new building, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone who's in an older type building that wants to achieve the WELL accreditation or certification, would they be able to do that? I know the standards have changed slightly, a bit more aligned with the UK, or would you encourage someone to go for Fitwell?
Right, the two parts to your questions, I think there. So in the first instance, I mean, I've heard quite a lot as well on other projects where engaging with the landlord can be quite challenging. Again, that is the first port of call. If you can get them to engage and let them know that you're working with them. I think in our case, our landlord got really nervous when he started to do indoor air quality testing and started to compare, and it started to open dialogue about our contracts and the quality of the air in the space and the leaky facades. I think you would have heard that story. You would come down to our space. So that quickly got them on board to talk. So finding the weaknesses in a space might help open dialogue with the landlord. But saying that, it's been quite a good experience because it got us to understand what's happening in the building and also the shortcomings, which then could be communicated back to the landlord. If the landlord is still very stubborn and does not want to engage, there are alternative routes. So at that point, you need to decide where the challenges are, which credits are impacted by, especially the preconditions, which are the mandatory points. At that point, I would recommend you open dialogue with IWBI. Kirsten's here, she'll probably be able to tell you more, or her colleagues. And they are a very helpful bunch. What you can do is tell them what your challenges are, and they will work with you to come up with a strategy, which is called the alternative adherence part. It's called an AAP. So going down that route, they will work with you to achieve that point. There are ways around it, so I wouldn't give up on that yet. In terms of the second part of your question about doing Fitwell, Fitwell is in my opinion, is a slightly watered down standard compared to WELL. Fitwell, like other sustainability or health and well-being, I think there are a few more tools floating in industry now in the marketplace, does not look at continuous monitoring of a space. It does not go into the depth and detail or where the criteria has come from, and also there's not very much scientific backing to say why you need to do certain things in a space. So for me, I don't find it as credible. It's a good way to do something positive for your space, but if you're looking at something of high quality, then WELL is a better option. Okay. Thank you very much.